In Numbers chapter 14, we see that the Israelites failed to trust God's promise that he was going to successfully get them into the promised land. And then we saw there was a consequence for not trusting in God. God said, well, now it's going to be 40 years in the wilderness, and you will not be able to enter the promised land. None of you are going to be able to get in because you didn't trust me. You didn't trust my promise. You know what the Israelites did next? They said, you're right. We should have trusted you. And you know what they did next? They tried to get into the promised land. That very next day, they said, let's go into the promised land. We should have listened the first time. We're sorry we didn't listen to your promise, but we're going to try to go into the promised land. And Moses looked at them and said, you guys are making the same mistake. Like the first time you didn't trust God's promise that he was going to get you into the promised land, and now that he's promised that he's not going to go with you into the promised land, if you try to get in there before the 40 years is done, you're still not trusting that promise. You're guilty of the same exact thing of not trusting in God's promise. But they didn't listen. Moses said, you're not going to succeed. This isn't going to go well for you. But they didn't listen, and they went off, and Moses stayed back, and Caleb stayed back, and Joshua stayed back, and the Bible even tells us that the Lord himself stayed back and did not go with them as they tried to attack the people who were living in the promised land. And it turned out just as Moses said it would. They did not succeed because they did not trust God's promise. Trusting God's promises is incredibly important. And so let me give you a couple of his promises. Blessed is the one who delights in the law of the Lord, who meditates on that word day and night. That person is like a tree that's planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season. Whatever that person does prospers. That's a promise in Psalm 1. Whoever hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, Jesus said, is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, but that house did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. A promise in Matthew 7. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin. The power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God. He gives us the victory over sin and death through our Lord Jesus Christ. A promise that you will succeed. A promise in 1 Corinthians 15. All of those are just some of the many promises that God gives you that you're going to be more than okay. You're going to win. You will get the victory. And you know what all those promises have in common? They do not depend at all on who wins an election, on which party is in control of anything, on what particular decisions are made and what impact they have on your life. They don't depend at all on a pandemic, on how long it lasts or on how serious it is. They don't depend at all on anything except God's ability to keep a promise. And since God is obviously able, as the Israelites found out, to keep a promise, then you can rest well tonight, my friends, because even God knows that in the end, you will succeed.